Margin versus markup and the correct allocation of overhead. So actually simple, but yet complexingly simple. So the first one, margin versus markup. A lot of people get that confused. I was looking at a great book today, which everyone should have a read of. You can get it free download on the internet. Graham Foster, The Power of Positive Profit, and he listed a lot of companies that had gone bankrupt in the States over the years and how much they'd lost. And his belief is that part of that was to do with not understanding margin versus markup. But put simply, if I buy an item for $10, I buy it in, and I sell it for $15, then my markup is 50%, because 50% is half of 10. Therefore, my sale price is 15, and we make $5 gross profit on that. That's my markup. But what's my margin? It isn't the same. It isn't 50%. It's 33%. And the way that I arrive at that is, of course, the piece I keep, $5, or the gross margin that I keep, is 1/3 or 33% of the $15. So kind of simple. You think, well, that's pretty logical. But in a sense, we get into trouble often if we don't get that sorted properly, and especially if we start discounting. So always be aware that margin isn't the same as markup, and if you want to know more detail, it's quite an expansive description, reasonably easy to read in the chapter on margin versus markup. The second part of the chapter is a discussion on the correct allocation of overhead. And again, quite a lot of work in the book on that. Suffice to say, a lot of business owners forget to allocate their overhead. So for instance, if they're selling a particular item, let's say it's a large ticket item like a shed, and it's $50,000, and let's say the business turns over, let's say $1 million, and they've got an overhead with their internal crew, their quoting, their office administration, all those other costs, which they can't directly put into that quote. They can't say, well, the shed is $50,000, it's $30,000 for this, $15,000 for that, $5,000 for overhead. So somehow they've got to allocate that in there. And what we've worked out over the years as action coaches in my own practices, that often overhead that's unchargeable for your office team and the very important functions that they do is around 10-11%. So it's really looking at your $1 million turnover, seeing how much you have as an overhead cost to the business, and then allocating some onto each quote at a proportionate level so that you actually cover that. Otherwise, at the end of the year, you can be in a loss situation. Last little example here, I worked with a boat company and they had $2,000 of overhead a month for machinery and equipment that they used, various things that they didn't charge, and really it was quite simple for them to get that sorted by adding that cost in, even as almost like a surcharge. But they can, don't want to say hide it or disguise it, but in a sense no one wants to see overhead, but it can be administration can be put in there, certainly needs to be put in there, and can be reasonably done against in each invoice.